Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Brian's Horror Corner, and welcome to this horror Blu-ray movie review video, the last one for this current series, where I've taken a look at random horror movies from my standard Blu-ray collection. So yeah, we've come to the end of September, so we're going to spit one more out here. Um, and the movie that we're going to review is the third movie in a series that I kind of have a love-hate relationship with, and that's the VHS series. And so I decided to include for this last review VHS Viral from 2014 here that I have on Blu-ray. They have the tagline, according to Geek League of America, utterly epic. Mm. Anyway, let's just go ahead and get into this movie review for VHS Viral. So obviously, I'm not going to well, computer problems. I'm not going to include any of the cast because there's way too many. So I'm just going to go through the sort of the premise and the different stories and stuff, and then give you my review. So VHS Viral is a 2014 American found footage horror anthology film produced by Bloody Disgusting, the third installment in the VHS franchise created by Brad Miska. It features a series of found footage shorts written and directed by Nacho Vigalondo, Marcel Sarmento, Greg Bishop, Justin Benson, and Aaron Scott Moorhead. VHS Viral segments include the story of an amateur video photographer who has an obsession with filming everything, a deranged illusionist who obtains a magical object of great power, a homemade machine that opens a door to a parallel world, and teenage skaters who unwittingly become targets of a Mexican death cult ritual. So that's sort of the idea and the premise of this movie. So basically, the wraparound story, the main framing story, is called Vicious Circles, directed by Marcel Saramento, written by T.J. Simfel, David White, and Marcel Saramento. This is basically about a guy with a video camera and his girlfriend, who he's the first 5 minutes of the movie, he's basically just like filming her the whole time doing stuff, and she likes it at first, and then she starts getting annoyed by it. He's kind of in an abusive relationship with his, I think it's his grandmother or his mom, I'm not sure. And then all of a sudden they follow on the news this ice cream truck that's on the run from the cops and stuff. And so it comes by their own neighborhood. And so this whole framing story, as they cut back and forth to it, of course, between segments, is that he's trying to the idea of this whole framing story, called once the name VHS Viral, is everybody's trying to tape what's going on to send it so that it becomes viral. Basically, that's the gist of it. And so this guy's trying to do that, and all of a sudden his girlfriend becomes like in a trance, and she walks into the middle of the street and disappears. So he goes after this truck, trying to track her down, basically. So that's the gist of the framing story. Then our first segment that we get is Dante the Great. This was directed and written by Greg Bishop. This is ultimately about a magician who happens to stumble upon Houdini's like cape, um, an old cape that Houdini used, and I don't remember how exactly he got it, but basically this cape can actually perform magic because he's a failed magician. He tries to be a magician, but not he's unsuccessful, and but by using this cloak or um, this cape, whatever you want to call it, magician's cloak, it allows him to perform real magic. And so all of a sudden, his assistants, these women assistants, start to disappear because, as it turns out, the cloak is more than meets the eye. And so, yeah, then that story kind of goes from there. The second story is Parallel Monsters. This was directed by Nacho Vigalondo. I think this was more of a Spanish short. Um, but basically, this is one about a guy, an inventor, who directs like a portal to a parallel universe where there's basically identical twins of him and his wife. And at first, they think it'd be fun to switch spots, so the one goes in, one goes out, and they flip flop what parallel universes they're in. But then the first guy, I don't know what you want to call him, like um, I hate to say the normal guy, but he discovers this other world where his wife and these two other guys, and they're all kind of they're all kind of naked or dressed scantily, whatever you want to say, shirtless for the guys, and um, again, as you can imagine, it's a horror anthology, found footage movie. So a little more than meets the eye happens there, and then as well as the guy from the parallel universe that comes into his universe, he stumbles upon his wife sleeping in bed, and that kind of they kind of simultaneously play into the big twist plot of the story. So and then the third, and by the way, as I said, this main framing story is cutting in and out between all of these separate segments here, but I'm not going to go through each thing that happens with that. The third and final story or segment is Bone Storm. This was directed by Justin Benson and Aaron Scott Moorhead, written by Justin Benson. This is basically about a bunch of skater kids, teenage skaters that um, they're kind of dicks, as you can imagine, late teenage years, and they do drugs and they're rude to people, whatever, and then they end up going down to Mexico, and they basically they stumble upon this one woman who doesn't say anything, kind of an ominous, creepy sort of lady. And then something happens, and then they stumble upon this cult of demons, basically, and it kind of goes from there. So I know I'm being pretty vague with these stories. I don't want to give too much away. There is a fourth segment that's not included in the movie. They cut it out. But they do have it at the end of the credits, the ending credits. It's called Gorgeous Vortex. This is directed by Todd Lincoln and written by Todd Lincoln. There's not any dialogue to this one. It's basically just cuts of this underground, sort of like mob, underground shadowy organization kind of thing going on. It's kind of hard to know exactly what's going on, but this woman is basically on the run, and she gets captured and she escapes, and it kind of goes back and forth. I don't have too much to say about that one. I just wanted to point it out that it is part of the movie, but after the ending credits, so it's not really part of VHS Viral. So yeah, that's the setup and the premise of these stories for VHS Viral from 2014. This isn't a very good movie. I mean, if you've seen my reviews before, I wasn't a huge fan of the original VHS. I thought it was okay. Not quite as good as the hype that it gets. VHS 2, I did like more. I like the stories and stuff more. Even though I still don't feel like any of these movies are really my jam, my go-to, because of the glitch trope that they use in some other things, the found footage aspects of anthologies. But and I'd heard before that this was the worst one in the VHS franchise, especially of the first three. I can't speak to 94 or 99 yet because I haven't seen them, although I do have them in my collection. And I think 85's coming out here in a few, well, actually, this in the next month of October on Shudder. But yeah, VHS Viral's kind of a mess. So let's just go ahead and get into it. As far as pros go, I do give them the movie credit for having some more really unique and original story ideas, especially for these three segments. Not so much the wraparound story, but they don't just rehash previous ideas or previous stories in a different way, but they kind of go off the chain with these ideas. And I think they're interesting and fun, the ideas anyway, for the most part, where you have this sort of this murderous magician with a supernatural cloak. You have this parallel universe with these monsters, and then you have these skaters that have to fend off this cult basically in Mexico. So I give them credit for that. It was very different in that regard. I probably enjoyed, and I go back and forth on this between the first two segments. I probably enjoyed Dante the Great segment the most, although just by a hair over Parallel Monsters. I think it's the most ambitious. Um, there's a lot going on, and in some of the kills, especially, he opens up one of the SWAT team guys' chests basically as part of the magic, even though it's a little bit CGI. But still, I thought that was pretty interesting. Pretty good and creative effects overall, though, in this story, and I thought it had a decent ending to it. Um, and then I like the look of the skeletons and the cult members as they become reanimated several times from the third segment. That's about the only thing I like from the third segment. Um, there's good makeup effects. They look really good related to the skeletons and those cult people. The second segment I thought was really interesting, maybe the closest to to having any sort of creepiness in this whole movie. Again, it has good effects with the genitalia that we end up seeing. on certain characters, the red eyes and the red mouth effects that we get here. It's all pretty good for this segment. And then overall, there is some pretty good solid blood and gore, even in the wraparound. That's the one thing I'll give about the wraparound is there is some violence there. There's some gore on screen. There's limbs removed, whether it be by a hitting vehicle or in one of the segments being torn off by somebody. So yeah, the blood and gore is there, as a lot of people come to expect from a VHS movie. So those are my pros for VHS Viral from 2014. Getting into some of the cons, I hated the wraparound story, the framing story, whatever you want to call it. I think it's the worst one of all three of these VHS movies so far. Like I said, not including 94, 99, or 85, obviously. It's too glitchy, it's too incoherent, and just not all that interesting, and it's certainly not executed well. It's all over the joint, and as much as I really didn't care for the one in the first movie compared to this, that actually looks like a decent wraparound story. So yeah, that's the worst thing about this movie, in my opinion. I didn't care about either of the characters or any of the other characters that we seem to stumble upon. That we really don't give a damn about any of them, but that includes the main guy and his girlfriend. Quite frankly, none of the stories are overly great. Like I said, I like if I had to pick one, Dante the Great and Parallel Monsters are certainly better than Bone Storm, which to me, other than the effects I talked about, the look of the skeletons and the call is the worst of this whole, the worst of like the segments, if you will, not counting the wraparound story. The wraparound story is the worst of all of it. But none of these stories are overly great. Well, they are different. None of them are scary. This movie's not scary in general, and none of them are executed as well as they could have been, even with some interesting ideas here. They just This whole movie just comes across as weak compared to the first two, and I think a lot has to do with budget. I think the first and second movie had like a $200,000-300,000 budget. This one was like 80,000, and it really shows. And that's not to say that you can't have a lower budget and still have a successful horror movie, but in this case, that's the case. They didn't use that money for the right things, and you can tell this has a lower budget. But overall, the whole movie just came across as weak, especially in comparison to the other two movies. It just felt less cinematic, just less, really. There's a lot of CGI blood that's used throughout this movie that I could have done without, obviously. So I was talking about the kills and the violence and the blood and the gore, but a good chunk of it is CGI, which is not great. I don't enjoy that. They continue with the glitch trope, which I hate, where you got the glitchiness of the videotape. I guess it cuts in and out. I got it's just so distracting. I really hate that part of all of these movies, and it's definitely in this one. Um, it's used at nauseum here. But overall, the thing I can say, this movie isn't scary. It isn't cohesive. It's just a lot of interesting ideas thrown together without landing any of them. It's just weak. This is just a very weak anthology movie. It's a weak found footage movie. It's a weak VHS movie, frankly. And so I'm going to give this a 5.5 out of 10. The interesting ideas are why it gets a 5 to start with, and then the half for some of the blood and gore and some other things. But other than that, it's not. I would not recommend this one. If you can find it on a streaming service that you already are pay for, then I would watch it that way. But 5.5 out of 10 for VHS Viral from 2014. Go ahead and comment down below if you guys have seen VHS Viral, what your favorite segment or story is in this movie, if you like it at all or not at all. Comment down below. Please like this video and hit the little notification bell down below so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. Please subscribe to my channel as well so you don't miss any of my great horror content, including what I have coming out for the month of October, my Halloween trifecta of horror coming up here in a day or two, actually. So some great things next month as well as the months after that and into next year. But that's going to wrap up this horror Blu-ray movie review series, at least for this month. I'm sure I'll have another one of these next year sometimes, because I still got a lot of movies I haven't seen. But I hope you guys enjoyed this series and the 10 movies that I was able to pull and review for this from this Blu-ray collection. I hope you enjoyed this review, even though I didn't exactly end the whole series on the best movie to review. But still, not every movie is going to be a 10 out of 10, and this one certainly isn't. But overall, I just hope you guys enjoyed this series, and Yeah, and stay tuned and get ready for Halloween, which is coming up the month of anyway in a couple of days. So I hope everybody's doing well this fall, enjoying themselves. But of course, as always, stay scared. Bye.